So you're here to see about Ernest Hemingway's The Killers, are you? What a bright boy. You're a bright boy, aren't you? Welcome to Ship Coverlet, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Aaron Ford, and we're here for a video which will appear in two separate playlists here on the channel. Number one being the short story discussion playlist, now approaching 100 videos large. And number two is the short story by short story read along of Ernest Hemingway's Finca edition. I believe this is the 24th video in that playlist. We will eventually get through all of them, hopefully. But today's short story is known as The Killers. There will be a So What Happened recap portion of this video, a literary criticism section where we talk about the literary goings-on in this short story, and finally a writer's corner where we talk about those things we might take from this short story as writers ourselves. So what happened? We're at Henry's lunchroom, pardon me, a diner with Nick Adams and George when two men walk in, and neither of them know that Sam is in the kitchen. They take a seat and try ordering dinner, but dinner isn't ready yet. That's a 6 o'clock thing, and it's only 5:15 or 5:30. The clock doesn't work. Who knows? So the men are called Al and Max, and they are both dressed alike in derby hats and black overcoats. They try ordering liquor as well, but there is no liquor, partly because this is a diner, but mostly because of prohibition. These men might not know about prohibition, or it might be where they got their start. The men eat with their gloves on. This could be very telling. Then they go about rounding up Nick, George, and Sam, the cook. Then Al goes to the kitchen with Nick and Sam, and they get to talking about how they have come to kill Ole Anderson. He doesn't know them, but they're going to kill him. Al tells Max he talks too much. Then they tie up Nick and Sam while George runs the shop, and they wait for Ole. They decide to leave once enough time passes, and Al says they should kill Nick and Sam and George. But they just leave, so Nick goes to tell Ole about what happened. But when he gets there, Ole is just laying in bed facing the wall. So Nick tells him about the guys coming to kill him, and he still doesn't move. Worse yet, he knows they're coming for him. So he goes back to the diner, and everyone agrees that Ole must have gotten in backwards with the mob. It's all pretty terrible, and Nick says he's getting out of Summit being the area where they are. So, what are we talking about with this short story? Well, here's one thing that I want to start with that I actually didn't put in the literary criticism section here. There are levels of liar, and you can tell exactly how afraid you should be if you meet people from different levels of lying. There are liars who are trying to get away with something. I know that my wallet is missing. I have pretty good reason to believe you took it. You tell me, well, it wasn't me, it was your roommate, Jeremy. That's a believable lie. You're trying to get away with it. Then there's the level of liar that doesn't care. If I tell you my wallet is missing, I have pretty good reason to believe you took it, and you tell me, oh, Santa Claus. You're daring me to say something. You don't care if I know that you took it, means you're probably pretty scary. Then there's the idea of the liar who does not lie. I think my wallet is missing. I tell you, I think my wallet is missing. And you tell me, I took it. I'm not getting that wallet back, and in fact, I should probably drop it. Al and Max start off at the level 2 liar. They're lying and they don't care to really make it believable. They come in dressed ridiculously for where they are, ridiculously for being at the diner, and they don't care that anybody knows. They eat with their gloves on. Probably best not to leave thumbprints. They don't care. Then they basically just tie up Nick and Sam and they say, yeah, we're going to kill Ole Anderson. But then there's the fourth level of lying. What's the fourth level of lying? The first level is I'm trying to get away with it. The second level is I don't care if you know. The third level is I'm daring you to say something. The fourth level is, and this is the most terrifying, you're going to lie for me. They set up George in the shop and they make him lie for them. Why? Go ahead and don't. I dare you. Go ahead and don't lie for us. See what happens. To you, to anyone you love, to anyone you may have ever known, to anyone that you have in your contact list. That's the fourth level. That's where these individuals are operating. There's also the matter of the fact that these two guys are contentious from the moment they set foot in that diner. That is also worth noting. But what is this story really all about? It's kind of a strange short story, isn't it? And we'll get to this in a minute here, but there's no real beef to this short story. There's a little bit there, but it comes very late and it happens very fast. This is supposedly based on a true story, based on a story that Hemingway knew. This is one of the stories that Hemingway said, I believe it was this short story, I left more out of that story than any other story I've written. You can wonder why. But we have Ole Anderson that apparently has an analog in real life known as Andre Anderson. Born in 1890 in Chicago, and he died April 1st, 1926. You may notice that this is not a very long lifespan. He was an American boxer from 1915 until his death in 1926. He was best known for knocking down drawing the world heavyweight champion Jack Dempsey, bad man, on June 24th, 1916 in a match in the Bronx, New York. This is straight from Wikipedia. It was alleged that Anderson would take dives for organized crime gamblers, which led to his shooting death reportedly after refusing to partake in further bribes. So that is the character on whom we assume, I don't know if Hemingway actually ever addressed it, Ole Anderson is based. So something to keep in mind. This is lightly fictionalized sort of fiction. Then there's the idea of Summit, Illinois. This takes place in Summit, Illinois. Hemingway born in Oak Park, Illinois. He did some time like it was prison, but spent some time working in Chicago, spent some time working in Kansas City for the Kansas City Star, by the way. But this is in Summit, Illinois. Why Summit, Illinois? Where? Well, Summit, Illinois is one of the suburbs to which the mafia started to move after they were done in Chicago, or after the clamps were starting to get put down in Chicago, or after things got just sort of uncomfortable enough in Chicago. So the story ends with Nick saying, I'm getting out of town. Now here's what the meat of this story is. The lion in the tall grass. You have Ole Anderson, who has apparently, I think we are led to believe in the story he was supposed to take a dive and did not. The manly spirits got the best of him. So instead of falling down like prey, he roared like a lion. beat the other man, ended up costing a lot of mobsters a lot of money. This is interesting in Hemingway because it has precedence. Do you remember, if you're here for this story, we're in a read-along. I'm assuming that you have read The Short Happy Life of Francis Macomber. In The Short Happy Life of Francis Macomber, there is a guy, Francis Macomber, who has hired a guide to take him around shooting animals. He gets himself a lion, and that lion retreats to the tall grass, and they have to go up onto the lion and find him. He is injured, but not dead. He is injured, but as dangerous as ever he was. That is Ole Anderson in the situation. Al and Max, that's a couple of guns, but you still have to creep up on the old lion. You still have to find the lion who knows he's dying and take him out. Notice, the mob, the mafia, whatever you want to call them, gangsters, there were an awful lot of very, very unpleasant deaths with that group, right? With any of those groups, right? Any type of organized crime. A lot of very, very bad situations where you would have wished you were just dead already. Most of those situations don't involve you being shot. It's a good way to bleed out. They don't want you to bleed out. They want you to plead out. Please, please, please. Right? But these two men, they have sawed-off shotguns. Why? You don't put your hands on Ole Anderson. You just kill him. You don't go and wrestle with a lion. You don't try to make the lion's death slow and painful. You better kill him. That is what is going on with Ole Anderson, the heavyweight contender, Ole Anderson. Even the big bad guys known, and what do they say their plan is when they're tying up Sam and Nick? We're going to shoot him. They do not plan to make anything dramatic. They do not plan to do anything ornate. They do not plan any methods of torture. You got to get your hands on him for that. We're just going to shoot him. It can be cold and dispassionate. But the crux of this is Ole Anderson is the old lion. Ole Anderson is the injured lion who has retreated to the tall grass of his bedroom. In The Short Happy Life of Francis Macomber, the promise is there from the hunting guide. That lion is going to charge. We have to go in there. We have to end him. That lion is going to charge. Ole Anderson is going to come out of his room. He said that. He said as much. I'll come out. I just haven't made my mind up to do it yet. I can't bring myself to do it yet. So that's where we are with Ole Anderson. He is the symbol. He is the injured bull that we see in Hemingway. He is the shot lion in the tall grass that we see in Hemingway. There's a discussion to be had as well with this short story, obviously. Death is there. Death is guaranteed the minute you do something. Do you take it? Right? How long do you stay in that room, knowing that death is on the other side? What is the quality of life like in that room? What is the quality of life like knowing that the moment you step out, you're dead? Do you just go ahead and do it? Are there things that you figure you should get in place? Also, sort of questionable here, Surely the mob knows where Ole Anderson lives. They know where he eats dinner. If you can follow him to eat dinner, you can follow him back home. Why not go home? Why not go to his home and get him there? I think we might have a hint from Hemingway, because Hemingway doesn't give us a lot of details that we don't need, right? But here we have Nick, as he's leaving the house where Ole lives. He's talking to the lady who's running the place about Ole Anderson, and she says, "You'd never know it about him being a heavyweight boxer. You'd never know it except for the way his face is," the woman said. They stood talking just inside the street door. "He's just as gentle." "Well, good night, Mrs. Hirsch," Nick said. "I'm not Mrs. Hirsch," the woman said. "She owns the place. I just look after it for her. I'm Mrs. Bell." I think that is a nod from Hemingway to let us know that Mrs. Bell, or Mrs. Hirsch, is in with the mob. That's why they don't want to go there. They don't want to cause problems for one of their associates. You shoot someone up in a rental house, no one else wants to live at that rental house, right? I think that the reason we are getting the fact that Mrs. Hirsch is not there is that Mrs. Hirsch is sort of above being there during those hours, right? Above being there during those hours because she is on the take. So I think that's what that is. Now, as far as the writer's corner is concerned with this short story, I think that this is one of Hemingway's more anthologized pieces for sure. I think it's one of his weaker pieces. I think that there is very little literary merit here. The literary merit here is with Ole Anderson and Nick in that conversation. Ole Anderson facing the wall, knowing that he's going to die. That's the entirety, in my opinion, of the literary merit to the short story. Why am I talking about this here as opposed to in the lit crit portion of this video? Well, just this. Without that section, this is basically a sitcom. Two rough guys show up looking for a mark. They do not find him. They crack some jokes. They go home. Nothing ventured, nothing lost. It's a sitcom. This piece is fairly weak from the literary criticism section. What could have made this a stronger piece? I think a little bit more character development at the beginning. I think it could have been something like Sam, who is the cook and referred to in very negative terms. Sam urges Nick not to get involved. Why does Sam know about that? Right? Give us a little bit to work with Sam and the idea of being in rougher situations. Give us a little bit of a clash between George, who is fairly obviously suburban, fairly obviously out of the cascades of organized crime. He has no idea what's going on here. If we could play a little bit more with that idea of innocence versus these nasty, nasty men. Then there is the vaudeville team, as our narrator themselves refers to it. Al and Max walk away looking like a vaudeville team. The idea of harshness, the idea of being good at your job, these are things that are very true to masculinity in Hemingway's writing. If there was a little bit more played up with that now, we do get the idea that the Max and Al team are referring to these soft men that work at a diner as girlfriends, right? We get that. But if there were some more hands-on deal to tell us about how effective Max and Al usually are, I think it would have gone a long way in this short story for giving us a little bit more to work with as readers to separate it from basically a sitcom type of idea. From a literary standpoint, like the gut punch of literature, I think you know what I'm saying there. The heft that literature feels when you're reading it. That conversation with Ole Anderson is much different in heft than the rest of this short story. If we were to get just a little bit more smoothed out through it, I think that it would go a long way towards making a more robust short story that would be worthy of all of the anthologies in which you can find The Killers by Ernest Hemingway. That's all I have for this short story discussion. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, consider hitting the subscribe button, because literature is the only thing I talk about on this channel. Dropping multiple videos every single week. There is poetry every Monday, and I hope to have you back for the next one.